Should be back. We should be back. Listen, this is what happens. Let me describe to you what happens. I open OBS. I go to I can even show you the thing here. I go to this, right? Off-screen coaching, whatever. And there's no face cam. So then I go, oh, that's weird. I restart OBS, it works fine. So then I start the stream and I'm in like my intro mode or starting and then transition. And then I go to, all right, off-screen hotkey, and then there's nothing there. It's just blackness. And it's happened the last 2 streams. And I don't understand why. OBS has to be the most phenomenal program with the most opportunities, but the most buggy and stupid thing. It's as bad as Sony Vegas. Holy crap. So yeah, today is going to be a real fun stream. Oh, that's going to pick up. Sorry, Dragonfly.
Like my future.
Yeah, exactly. And, thank you for the sub, by the way. And Prime, thank you for the sub as well. So here's the deal. Today is going to be a major scuff stream. This is a cast. I have broken my thumb. I don't know if you can see that. Okay? You see that thumbnail? This thing is fat, okay? Here, let me just show you. This will be easier to show rather than tell, okay? So, playing flag football day before yesterday. We're up by 1 touchdown. This is 4th down. For those of you EU morons that don't understand how this works, basically I have to pull flag, stop, man, score touchdown. This is a pretty competitive league. It's my first season in it. I've had a lot of fun. So anyway, they toss it here. I take a really bad angle on this guy actually, but I make the diving flagpole. But unfortunately, if you go at a really slow pace here, as I make the diving flagpole, watch my right hand. I land very hard on my right thumb and break it. So, not only did I break my right thumb, but also, last night, my thumb swelling was so bad, I couldn't sleep, and we couldn't sleep till what? Was it 4:30 a.m. about?
It was like 5.
It was ridiculous. So I'm on like 3 hours of sleep with a broken thumb. Okay? So we're gonna have a great stream. In addition to that, oh, and she also busted her pinky, so she's gotta get surgery on that. Anyway, in addition to that, we have a metric butt ton of stuff to go over. In addition to that, my internet is looking shaky. So please pray that the internet doesn't just conk on me. I don't know why it's been bothersome the last 2 days, but it has been, and so that's the real concern here. So let's pull open Overwatch.
Take my money, you pet.
I will gladly do that. So we're going to try and go over as much as I possibly can. The hero changes, the macro changes, and what you're going to get here that you're not going to get on other streams is I'm going to talk to you about really how the balance of the game looks, how it feels. I think everybody can kind of give you some feedback there. But on the macro, like what's changed, big picture. And I think like that's going to be helpful for those of you educational nerds, and maybe for those of you that are kind of looking to understand Overwatch League a little bit more. So let me actually get the patch notes pulled up really fast. Because I don't want to go off of memory because I know I'm going to forget something. Because we've been playing this for a little while. Where is the patch notes? Where's the patch notes? Patch notes. Patch notes. Patch. There they are. Okay. Patch notes. Let's pull these up, and then I'm going to pull open the game and I'll talk about it. So I have a broken right thumb. Playing is going to be super questionable. I tried to play like one game, and I can bear like anything that involves like quick turns. No bueno. It doesn't happen. So I'll try and demonstrate as best I can. If I can't demonstrate as well as I want to, then you can just go to some other stream some other time, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. How's my day going? Yeah, I have my chat on my phone. It's going fine, actually. Like, I mean, outside of the thumb thing, like that was really annoying this morning. We were down at like the orthopedic surgeon guy who was taping it up and x-raying it for hours this morning. But like, it's actually kind of nice to get that done, so I can't really complain. Okay. Work. Okay. Please, internet, please. I desperately please. Are you using internet? I beg. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's wrong. Have you got any messages from them, by the way? The internet folks? No. Okay. So, anyway. Do you know if there's been balance changes since the last alpha? I mean, yes, I know. There have been lots of balance changes since the last alpha. I'm not going to detail all of like the individual changes in between, but I can give you the end result as best I can. Let's go over the hero reworks here. So Anima, thankfully, one of my moderators took the time to kind of write up like a good little quick TLDR of like what each hero does. And so we'll try and follow his structure basically. And I am going to get to the questions and ask Spilo. I should probably put my headphones on so you guys don't hear so much echo. Guys, I'm good. I think I should be able to plug this in, no problem. Spilo is too broken to play, basically. Yeah, so that's my thing. So I can do this, okay, but I can't do like, you know, that doesn't work. Okay, so couple of things first. Sojourn, new DPS hero, pretty darn cool. She looks awesome. She handles really awesome. From the moment I played her very, very quickly on Alpha. It was like the first game I played, I got to lock Sojourn. And felt amazing. Regarding the overall hero's strength, she's very, very fluid to play. She's a lot of fun. She feels very unique, which is obviously the most important thing, in my opinion, besides like balance and fun to play, is does the hero actually feel unique? Does it feel like a unique experience? And if she feels unique, she feels very fluid. I feel like I'm playing almost a different game, like in Apex Legends or something like that. So the way her shift works, it's vertical mobility, but it's also horizontal mobility. In other words, I could just shift here and not jump, and there you go, you move a little faster. But I could press spacebar at any time and launch yourself in the air. Now, there's a lot of tech and little things that you could do with this. I'm not gonna demonstrate any of it because I suck, and I feel if I could do it, I couldn't do it with this. So just take my word for it that she can move. The jump height isn't super, super high, but it's enough to like access a lot of different high grounds. And this is very important for her as an escape cooldown, but also could be used aggressively, okay? 7-second cooldown used to be 5 seconds. And if you want, we'll talk about my opinion of the hero balance because we're going to talk a lot about her shift later. The E, now the E is actually pretty interesting. So when the E first came onto Alpha, I believe it was 300 damage total. I don't know how long it lasts here. Let's actually see. 3, 2, 5. So it's about 5 seconds. So it was about 50 DPS. Or it's about 50 DPS. On Alpha, it was a lot higher. It was around 70 DPS. It was about 65, 70 DPS. It was a total of 300 damage in the same time duration. To the point where if you didn't react to it being placed on you instantly, and I'm talking almost legitimately instantly, you would die to it. It was unbelievably broken for a very brief period of time. In Alpha, it's now only 200 damage now, which is still very strong. Therefore, you know, on an immobile target, if I E directly, it is going to kill them for the full duration. Exactly, and there is a slight slow. The slow isn't as bad as people, because remember people on the Reddit were like, oh no, another CC, oh no. It's not that bad. The slow is actually relatively, it's annoying, but it's not that bad. What is interesting, of course, is that the cooldown of this is it's 15 seconds. It's pretty long cooldown. It's okay. Like, we'll talk a little bit more about how it's used later, but I can basically tell you backline, chokes, things like that, it's okay. And it's also okay in duels as well in close range. It's a little hard to land, and it doesn't have an infinite launch. So a lot of people think like it just goes on and on and on. It doesn't. It's a straight, basically, quote-unquote, hit scan in terms of it doesn't drop. It just goes on into an infinity, and that's about as far as it goes. Okay? Then the other thing, and obviously the most important thing, is her weapon, which is projectile. You can kind of see the projectiles, very fast-moving projectiles. You can see it right there. That's a little bit easier to see there. Very fast-moving projectile that charges up with the UI in the center of your screen. Now, once it's about, I don't remember the exact number, I think 65, you can now one-shot with a headshot. So let me give you a demonstration here. I believe it's about 65, I think. Okay, wait, that's a bot that actually shoots things. That's not a good demonstration. Okay, so this should one-shot. Not quite. So maybe it's 75. It must be 75. I'm doing this wrong. So 75. Let's see if we can get it. It charges up apparently in increments of 5. Even I didn't know that. Okay, not 75. It must be 80. Okay, so anyway, about 80 damage. It's a one-shot headshot for 200 HP heroes. I believe at full charge it will one-shot headshot. I'm almost positive a 250 HP target. I know it did before. I don't know if it does anymore. It used to be 280 total damage if you got a fully charged headshot. But it takes time to charge, and it is hit scan. The actual right-click is indeed hit scan. I need to expand my chat because I can't see what's going on. Okay, there we go. It's a really, really cool sounding weapon. The right-click is really satisfying to land. But it's actually a little bit hard to land. So it used to be where the hitbox of the right click was a little bit bigger. So they've nerfed all of that. I'll talk more about the total balance in just a moment. Last thing is her ultimate, which I'm going to try and demonstrate as best I can with my hand. It just essentially means you automatically charge your right click no matter how much damage you're doing. So watch my middle UI here. Ready? Bang. Bang. See, it's automatically charging. I believe it charges slightly faster if you also shoot. But obviously that's not something that you want to be doing. You just want to be waiting for the next right click and aiming it precisely. So obviously extremely powerful ultimate. Now, talk about the hero's balance. On launch, her shift used to be 5 seconds, not 7. The E used to be 300 damage, not 200. And the right click hitbox used to be a little bigger as well. There's also a nerf to how fast you charge a one shot. I believe on launch, or at least in early phases of the alpha, 60 or 65 was a one shot headshot. Now it seems to be more like 75, 80. Very interesting to note. Now, in terms of playstyle, I think people have generally got a pretty good idea of it. It's a lot like Soldier 76 in some aspects, but not at all in other aspects. So one thing that Sojourn is she's really good at taking like these mid-range angles, a lot like Soldier. So Soldier's not very close up, Soldier's not very good at long range, Soldier's kind of good in the medium ranges, and Sojourn's definitely in that situation too, where it's reasonably difficult to land right click, but it's not like, you know, across a million miles. Like this is pretty easy to land. But then also you have to keep in mind her weapon is projectile, so even though there isn't a fall off to my knowledge, at extreme long ranges it is hard to track with the projectile, so you want to be at medium range. So medium range DPS with mobility. Now here's what I think brings the hero's uniqueness, and it is the vertical mobility, not the floor-to-floor horizontal sprint mobility that the Soldier has. So the ability to access high grounds immediately. There's even a little bit of tech here. This is a really cool animation. Check this one out, where you actually shift at the ground. Watch my shift. That right there, that's such a cool animation. It's such a cool little thing that you can do. So she's kind of like a more mobile Soldier in terms of verticality, but less mobile Soldier in terms of flanking. The other thing that makes Sojourn very interesting is that she's, when given like the one-shot capability, she's a lot more scary in that aspect, but she's significantly less self-sufficient. She's significantly less self-sufficient. In other words, if you shoot a Sojourn, she can't heal herself. She has to run away. Worth noting as well, by the way, the body shot damage on this railgun is actually pretty decent too. So if I go to 65, yeah, that's not what I wanted.
Double kill.
Okay, 76. That's a pretty decent amount of damage, right? So she's basically a relatively mobile DPS hero that has options. Initially in alpha, she was played a lot with brawl comps, like with Zarya, Reaper, Lucio, Moira, because she was just so brokenly strong, and she had relatively high mobility, so a Reaper, Lucio, Moira, Tracer can't just instantly kill her because she could run away, as well as the fact because it was so easy to charge her right click, Tracers actually had to be really scared. You could just pepper Tracer a little bit, now all of a sudden I'm like 40 charge and I can one-shot a Tracer back in the day. That was really, really scary. So what they did is they nerfed the crap out of her. They nerfed her right click, they nerfed her charge to right click, they nerfed her E, they nerfed her mobility, they nerfed a lot of things about her, maybe a couple other things that I'm not remembering. And basically right now, I could be honest with you, she's not a very strong hero right now. She might be the weakest hero in Overwatch launch since maybe Orisa or Ana. I'm not familiar with the launch of those heroes. I wasn't playing enough. I was very casual, but she's certainly weaker than release Hammond. Certainly weaker than release Brig. Obviously weaker than release Echo. She's also weaker than release Baptiste. She's certainly weaker than release Sigma as well. So a little bit unfortunate. I don't think you'll see much of her in Overwatch League. We'll see, obviously, what Blizzard does with betas moving forward, but you're not going to be seeing much Sojourn. The interesting, Moira as well. I think even Moira could be considered overtuned. Highlight Waves, she is not played very often. She has a hero that has a very strong niche, but I don't think Blizzard leaned into the niche well enough. A lot of the feedback that we've been trying to give Blizzard is that we actually think that some of her power needs to be shifted away from her right click and more into her shift. Like, for example, I would love to see her shift go back to a 5-second or maybe a 6-second cooldown and nerf her right click a little bit more, so that the one-shot potential with her ultimate is a little weaker, but has a lot more access to mobility. For example, think of a hit scan hero or a shooter hero that has a lot of vertical mobility. That's not something that we have in Overwatch. Maybe even a hit scan that's like actually relatively decently playable against dive. We don't really have that in Overwatch. So Soldier's probably the best versus dive hit scan that we have, or point and shoot hero that we have. So having a hero that could fit that niche, especially the vertical mobility, I think is something they should lean into more. We'll see what they do though. I mean, it would definitely keep her enough space where she's still fun to play, but a little bit less annoying. I will say this, though, especially in the first little bit of alpha, her ultimate was unbelievably powerful. Unbelievably powerful, and even now that's harder to land, it is still a very, very powerful ultimate. I'd say probably the top 20% of ultimates in the game, maybe top 5 or so. So the fact that you can just, this is a one shot, any headshot. And even if you, and it's a double body shot, right? 1, 2, like it's unbelievably how powerful this is. And it lasts a relatively decent long time. You'll see a lot of clips likely on YouTube if you haven't already of people going around with this ultimate and just killing 4 or 5 legitimately. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So her ultimate still holds relevance. The rest of her kit, not so much. Do you guys have any questions about Sojourn? I'm going to try and keep them to big, easy, interesting questions. If you guys have any like micro detail questions, I'm going to try and pass this because we have a lot to go over. Can Matrix eat her right click? Yes. I think it's technically a shot. So as far, I'm 99.9% sure yes. Yep. So I think you have to give credit to the Blizzard design team. This is a very unique hero. I think her voice lines are cool. Her character operates cool. She's very she's cool. Would you play her in a more divey comp? I would say probably more divey or brawly. Anything that's going to involve poke or I don't want to say dive brawly. Mobile comp, short range comp, long range comp. Not a good long range hero most of the time. She looks like a hero that you'd want a mercy damage boost on 24/7, but actually a lot of times she's going to lose to a Hanzo and Stormbow or like random spam across the map. She's definitely going to lose to a Widow, anything that's long range. She's probably going to lose to Ashe, and heck, she might even lose to Soldier at long range unless she's landing that right click. So it's definitely a hero that has little things that make her look like she's really good at range, but she's actually a little bit more niche at range. She's way better in these more hybrid compositions. But take my word with a grain of salt, because obviously what composition she's played in is something that is likely to change at any point in time. She might get buffed. Maybe the players find a crazy niche playstyle with her, and all of a sudden she can work in a composition that she hasn't before. I can just tell you where she's at right now. What's the point of her E? It's really good in duels. So in other words, if I'm close to somebody, that does a lot of damage. That does a lot of damage, and it forces them to move. If I see supports moving back here, I'll say this really quick. This hero might feel, even though she's aim dependent, the fact her E alone might make her a little bit stronger in lower ranks, because even since it's been nerfed, the fact that this E does this much damage, like that's a lot of damage. Like I think like against lower ranked players that aren't as quick as reacting or paying attention to things like that, it's gonna kill a lot of bronze supports. Let's put it that way. Her hitbox is actually pretty tough, if I remember correctly. Her hitbox is quite tough. Think Baptiste hitbox, very shifty. From what I remember, she's actually pretty hard to hit. Does it self damage? I don't believe so. No. Do we know the charge one shot with Mercy Boost? No, but I'd imagine it's around 62, 60. There's no 60, maybe 60. What counters her? Long range, any hit scan really, long range counters her. And then close range, she's a little bit less good against Tracer than she was before since her nerfs. I wouldn't say she has any necessary hard counters, she just has heroes. Okay. We'll get to this later. I'm going to repeat this later. Somebody remind me. But one of the biggest changes with Overwatch, and I want you guys to pay attention to this, and I firmly believe this to be true, is that in Overwatch 2, there are very, very few, if zero, hard counters left in the game. A lot of heroes that were like so-called hard counters, like Sombra the Ball. I'm trying to think of some other examples here. Think about like Brig to Genji, Brig to Tracer, not really a hard counter. I'm trying to think here, like, what the heck? Oh, my internet's bonking here. Well, wait a second. Like May versus Ryan's really annoying to play against. Reaper versus Winston. There's a lot more leeway where those hard counters don't really exist. Like even Ryan versus, like, let's say spam comps, Ryan versus dive comps. Some of the reworks have made these heroes a lot less counterable. So there's a lot more like flexibility with each hero. Pharah obviously. Brig Doom, that's another great example. Sombra Doom. There's a lot fewer hard counters in the game. It's not just the CC change, it's also the fact that a lot of the reworks have given more heroes, like Reinhardt, for example, more options rather than just I stand on ground and swing hammer. There's other things that he can do as well now, which makes it a lot more interesting. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Sombra to Zen, I mean, that's still, I wouldn't even say that's a hard counter, no. I mean, it's definitely a counter, but it's not a hard counter. Okay, so we're gonna move on here. I hope that kind of explains any questions you guys may have. I'm gonna focus on the next hero here. Let's go ahead and go down the list. Let's just start from alphabetically here. D.Va, we'll try and do, I might do a tier list later I will say this though, D.Va is incredibly strong right now. Obviously, if you're in bronze and you have divas that just stand at choke and just shoot at a million miles away and get melted, the diva's not going to feel very strong. But she is significantly harder with somebody who even has an inkling of how to play. The 50 armor it goes a long way. The damage reduction across the board with tanks, we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about the macro stuff after I go with the hero specific stuff. But the big change for her is the 3-second matrix. So 1, 2, 3. That's crazy. That's crazy, man. That's actually crazy. They did nerf D.Va, yes, they did nerf D.Va. She was even stronger earlier, so they did nerf D.Va. She's still a really strong hero. Again, I'm not really speaking about Overwatch League meta right now. The meta in Overwatch League is it's different. It's different, and it also differs a little bit from team to team. I'm talking, but the other thing about Overwatch League meta too is it usually leans into one strong hero. So if one hero is really strong, they'll pick heroes around that hero. It doesn't mean that if D.Va is or is not playing, it doesn't mean that D.Va is not strong or is actually oppressive. It just means that she doesn't fit the meta super well. I think you'll see that a little bit depending on what is meta in Overwatch League. But I will say this, that D.Va is very strong, probably received the most buffs out of all the tanks besides maybe Reinhardt. It's just crazy like how tanky she is and how much she can do even with the tank nerf in terms of like the actual damage output. Big stuff. Yeah.
Our future will be forged in conflict.
I mean, not being able to shoot while matrixing, I mean, that's always been the case, though. Okay, so the Doofus rework, I'm sure everybody in this chat has already seen videos in this, so I'm not going to go into the details. You guys already know this crap. The only thing I can tell you is that Slam and Uppercut got combined. There's a lot more mobility. You can reach a lot higher, almost like Winston jump height with it. I think it might actually be Winston jump height. The right-click punch, still same mechanics, nothing different with that. It does, obviously, all of his stuff does less damage, significantly less damage. In fact, if I fully charge a right-click punch, barely nothing. And this is where it gets really interesting, though. Now, you're not going to be able to see it here because the trading bots don't do enough damage. But if I use my E, which is my blocking animation here, that reduces damage by, I think, 90%. Again, I'll look at the patch notes, which means that you block damage, and then once that gets to, I think, about 150 damage, if somebody does 150 damage to you of any type, beam, bullet, projectile, anything, I think even Reinhardt hammer swings, then you get a charged punch. Your fist is going to start glowing, and it doesn't expire until you use it. And now when you punch with the glowy punch, I believe it's like maybe 50 extra damage. But what it does do is it stuns. It stuns you for a long time. I think it's about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds. Again, I don't have all the hard numbers here. There are people who have way more detailed information. I'm just giving you the brief overview. So do not shoot Doom when he does this unless he is 1 HP and or you are prepared to take a nasty punch up against a wall. So what they made Doom is essentially a hero who has a lot of engage opportunity, like a dive tank. No comment. But then has also given him a defensive capability with this to preserve his own life, but then also punish you for being foolish enough to shoot him. He creates space exactly like Ball. We'll talk about the overall tank changes and how they do. Ultimate's exact same, nothing's different. Primary fire operates exact same. Really just a dive tank now. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's actually not that complicated. The only thing I'd say is there's a couple of animation cancels that you can use. You can animation cancel your slam in the air and then punch out to get like some verticality. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. Less options for sure than old Doomfist, but obviously in general, probably a hero better placed in his position. Can punch still cancel stuff? Yeah, I believe so, yes. Yes, exactly, Spyros. Okay, so Orisa. Now, this might be the most interesting rework of all of them because they've taken a philosophy of making tanks a little bit more proactive and maybe a little bit more hands-on to play, and they've really showed their stuff here because you're talking about a hero who's shield, halt, shoot, right? And I think even with the nerfs to shield, the buffs to fortify that allowed her to play a little bit more involved, she was still had a hero that had some passive aspects of her. That's completely gone now. Fortify still operates the same. So notice that she gets extra HP while she's fortifying, okay? The other thing that she has, everybody's talking about, are the other two abilities. The E, which reflects damage, knocks enemies back, does damage to them, and obviously she doesn't take damage while she's doing that, and she also moves faster. Again, details of this, not 100% sure on the amount of damage. I know it's not particularly high. Please check out, we'll go over the patch notes, but please check out other streamers or other videos who've gone over the details of this. But you can do wonderful fun things like this, move fast, and that works. That's awesome. The other thing that might be even more fun is the Javelin, which is a knockback like Doomfist Punch. It does more damage if they hit a wall. It does stun, it does cancel, and it does look really cool. Maybe a little underpowered, I'm not sure. It is a little tricky to land, but it's obviously fun. The only other thing that's worth mentioning is the gun, which is operated like Halo guns, like the Alien Covenant guns, on heat. If it overheats, you're screwed. I believe there's ways of canceling this though. So I believe if you fortify... No. There's a way to cancel this though. Or reset the heat. Yeah, so I think you rapidly... I'm not sure. You guys are gonna have to dig around with the interactions. I know there's one of these abilities or cooldowns that actually cuts down on the amount of heat or reduces it entirely, but you're gonna have to do it. No spear is not AoE, sadly. That would be cool if it actually pierced, like FMJ, you know? It does not headshot, no. No. Yeah. E only works in projectiles, right? Hit scan or projectiles. I don't know if it works on beams. I'm not sure. Fortify looks like it reduces heat buildup. You might be right. Yeah, you're definitely right. So Fortify does reduce heat buildup. Good to know. That was exactly the interaction I was looking for. Thank you. The only last thing to say with Orisa here is the fact that her ultimate is like Doomfist Slam, but Grav. It's weird. Sucks to man, and then I can release. And unlike and exactly like Doomfist Ultimate, you could just let it fully charge and it will go off on its own. You are fortified when you do the ultimate. So when you're channeling it, you are fortified. My initial takeoff of this after playing with it a little while in quick play against and seeing more of it, I don't think it's a particularly strong ultimate. It definitely needs to be comboed to get like full power, not necessarily with an ultimate, but with another cooldown on a nade, not Doomfist, Dynamite, something like that. You really want to try and combo it because it doesn't actually do all that damage unless you get it fully charged. So here's my TLDR of Orisa. Orisa is like a personification of, I think, what hopefully we see more from Blizzard in terms of rework. So you have heroes with a lot of interesting abilities that is very fun to play and is way more engaging and interactive. Orisa is completely different from how she was in live, and it's amazing. She's not actually a very particularly strong hero right now. At least not in the pro meta, at least not in our current understanding. Maybe that people figure something out with Orisa. But she is a lot of fun to play. Much, much more fun to play. Her main problem right now in terms of balance is she does take a lot of damage without having the shield and being very involved, right? It is difficult for immobile tanks to not have barriers. You look at Reinhardt, he's got a barrier. You look at Sigma, he's got a barrier. You look at Zarya, she has a barrier for herself, but she also can bubble people away from the map so she can help people far away from her. Orisa cannot. Orisa is very limited with what she could do if she's not closer and more directly involved. So she's kind of more like a brawl-oriented tank, but unlike Ball, unlike Doom, unlike even D.Va, she doesn't have the mobility to really compensate. So, look to see Orisa maybe receive some more slight buffs in the future, but we will see. Do you see Orisa Rush? No, Ryan is too good. Ryan is too good at Orisa Rush. If Rush is going to be played, it's most likely going to be with a Ryan or a Zarya who will allow the Rush DPS to do more things. Yeah, Orisa is a hero that is very engaging and very fun, but I think there's been a lot of complaints about her gun, though. I think the gun is by far the weakest part of the kit, where they've changed it. I think the heat mechanic is fine, but the projectiles feel weird and slow and do not feel very fluid. So my biggest complaint with Orisa is her gun. Maybe if you make her gun more relevant, she's a little bit more intimidating. Does it ult matter if you're closer to her or flat damage? I think as long as you get sucked in, it doesn't matter how close you are to her. Okay. Interesting hero. Flawed, but definitely encouraging. Reinhardt. Okay. Double fire strike. Keep in mind that they do less damage now. I believe it's 90 damage now because of the reduced tank damage output. Shield is 1200. Oh, the other thing there is all tanks I believe have reduced boop thing. And then the other thing here, let me see if I can do it right, is you can cancel pen as well as control it. Watch this pen control. Noticeably more pen control. Not massive, but noticeably more pen control. The other thing you could do is you could press the button again, and it cancels the pen. So you could go for pen plays and cancel them if you get the opportunity. You could pen an Ana, stop the pen, shield the sleep dart, and then kill her. I Reinhardt might be the most buff tank in the game next to Doomfist to say. Probably D.Va or Zarya. D.Va, Zarya, and Rein have all received massive, massive buffs and their flexibility and their overall strength. The big thing with Reinhardt is the fact that he has 2 Fire Strikes, offers a little bit more range. Charge, because you can cancel it, offers a lot more mobility. And his HP increase, which is more so than I think any other tank, allows him to play a lot more solo-oriented. He's a lot less constantly demanding healing. Oh, I'm 1 HP perma. He's actually, he can do a lot of crap. Also, keep in mind, Pin only does like 200 damage now, something like that, 190. But yeah, you have like way more options to do with Reinhardt. He can kind of play on his own now. He's not as reliant on an off tank to create space. He's not reliant on a hard pocket to create space. He can do stuff just by swinging his hammer, pinning in, okay, I'm good, and then you can go in, you got your duplicate fire strikes. Like, Rein, I think, is another very successful rework, because again, it's a hero that feels like, yes, there are maps like King's Row where Reinhardt is good, and yes, there are maps like Gibraltar where Reinhardt is bad, but there's a lot more options. We talk about the cloudy Reinhardt, clear high ground, clear out space. That type of Reinhardt just got some love with this rework. So I really, for you Reinhardt mains out there, be very encouraged. Ignoring the overall macro side of the game, you're going to feel less like I have to swap because I can't do anything. You can actually play a lot more solo oriented here. Very important quality of life changes for Reinhardt. Okay. Roadhog, nothing to mention. I beg Blizzard to rework this hero. Just terrible design, in my opinion. Roadhog, Moira, worst design heroes still remaining in Overwatch, but maybe we'll see a rework in the future. Sigma's nothing's changed. You can see the HP changes, a little bit more HP, and obviously the damage changes for all tanks. Winston, the only change worth mentioning. Slightly more armor. Bubble HP is a little higher. I believe it was 600 on live. It is now 800. And then he has a right click, which I'm sure everybody has already seen by now. You click and hold right click. And I believe it is projectile, but I'm not 100% sure. You might want to test it out. But obviously the fully charged damage, it's not much. It's like 50 damage, but it's okay. My biggest complaint with the right click, and it is the complaint from most of the pros, is that the right click costs ammo. So look at my ammo in the bottom right. 20 ammo, that's kind of annoying. So I would prefer a lot more if they actually had the right click charge like total 5 ammo, or maybe no ammo at all. That way it becomes a situation where you're not punished for using it and then having to reload because you did a whopping 40 damage and you missed the shot, and then you're diving and you already have only 80 ammo. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is annoying. So it's a cool ability. I think it actually is really nice. Adds a little bit of mechanics, adds a little bit of flexibility. And again, more flexibility because we have things that Winston is weak at. Well, he's a little less weak at. He's got a little bit of range, right? But obviously the ammo kind of sucks. So I'm hoping that they fix that. Everything else is exactly the same with Winston. Nothing has changed. The range, like on the right click, it's pretty far. I might be, oh, maybe it's not. Good question. Maybe 30 meters? Yeah, something like 30 meters. Eyeball it. Ball, nothing has changed. I believe there's been some UI changes. Yeah, you see here, this tells you how many people you're close to get your shield generate for your shields on your E. And then I believe there's also a notification on when you can slam, so watch my UI carefully. See that right in the middle there? See that right in the middle, that little orange arrow? That's when I can slam. Outside of that, nothing's changed. Same hero, he's totally fine, nothing crazy. Okay. It's terrible for ult farming, yes. It's also sketchy in dives. Zarya! One of the 3 tanks that I think received massive buffs in Overwatch 2. The massive buff is that you can do this. Everybody should know this already, but in case you missed it, bubble 1 and bubble 2. There's a slight cooldown before I can bubble the same person again. So in other words, I can't just bubble 2 in a row without just chain perfectly. So if I bubble myself, and it's the same for self bubble too. So if I bubble myself once, watch carefully. I'm smashing my shift. There's 1, smash, smash, smash. Come on, bubble, 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 bubble. Oh, you can bubble yourself fast. Chat, that's worth noting. You can bubble yourself twice in a row, but you cannot bubble somebody else twice in a row. You can bubble them twice in a row, but you have to wait about a second or so. So let's demonstrate that again. I did not know that. Okay, here we go. So bubble 1, mashing the E, bubbles expired. About 2 seconds, okay? But But this is a massive buff. Again, it's the flexibility, right? The problem with Zarya is bubble was an awesomely powerful cooldown, but you only had one. And you had self bubble. And playing against dive, playing against spam, you'd be like, oh, man, I wish I could be helping these guys. Man, I wish I could. And you can only bubble an angle, a DPS, a backliner once. Now you can do it twice. Or you can play very aggressive yourself and bubble yourself twice. The other thing, little minor thing, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it with my thumb, but you can. Yeah, so there is slightly more mobility with right-click jump. So with before, you could do all sorts of kind of like goofy things with right-click jump. Now you can get even higher with right-click jump. You see that? Just a little higher. So that's worth noting. It's not exactly a mobility buff, but you know, every little bit counts. So again, you have a hero that has a lot fewer hard counters, a lot more flexibility with how she plays. Besides that, I don't think anything's changed. Is there a delay between throwing out bubbles on 2 different targets? I believe not. You can do it instantly, in fact. So I can bubble myself and somebody else at the same time, or I can bubble 2 different targets instantly. So, cool stuff. She was very popular early in Overwatch League meta. I think she's still strong, and you're likely to see some of her in future Overwatch League meta, just because bubbling a DPS twice in a row, that's pretty darn strong. We'll talk about why bubbling DPS is so strong. Okay, a couple more reworks here. Bastion, another successful rework, I think. Maybe there's some work left to be done, but I think overall, pretty good. He's not very strong, but he's pretty interesting. And he's going to be, actually, I think, pretty strong in lower ranks, because his shift is the exact same in terms of changing form, but you can now move. 3, 2, 1. See the counter on the left, and then I lose it. And then I get it again at 12 seconds. So it's actually crazy. He cannot heal, but he can move while in Bastion, turret form. This gun is hit scan, and it shoots like bursts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's semi-automatic. Bang, 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 bang. If you can land your shots, it does an unbelievable amount of damage. Let me show this right here. Right? Obviously, all headshots, obviously hard to land, but it's an option. It's a lot of damage. His sticky grenade, with a little bit of a boop. I believe you can actually sticky grenade bounce yourself. I'm terrible at this kind of stuff. I've actually never even tried this, so let's actually see. Yeah, so you can kind of sticky grenade yourself and launch yourself. But the big change is obviously the fact that he can move while doing this. So you have bursts of huge value, and you can exit it if you want to. So I think the Bastion rework was largely successful. I think it made him definitely more interesting to play, more engaging, less AFK in the brain, less cheese. Definitely way more engaging. Successful rework. Let me show you his ultimate, which might be the more cheese aspect of his kit. And this is why when Karku says that this guy's like D tier, I think, in lower ranks, I had to laugh, because this ultimate is going to be absolutely busted in lower ranks. 2, 3. Like Doomfist Ultimate, you're required to react to this and get kills. I can tell you, playing up against, when I was in Overwatch 2 Alpha, and I was playing against lower ranked players, like Plats, Diamonds even, I'm getting like 2 kills every Bastion Ultimate. It's really, really hard to mess that up. The only thing that can really counter is like Zarya bubbles, things like that. You know, if you can shield off the center or avoid the center, but it's a good ult. It does damage, and you can do it really quickly too. If you hide behind a corner, go 3, 2, 1, there you go. So is the hero strong? No, because Discord exists, Matrix exists, Sleep exists, Nade exists, and there are other heroes that easily outrange him. His hitbox is still massive. But he's more engaging, more interesting, and there's a chance that this hero might still be more viable in lower to mid ranks. And even you'll still see your GM Bastion 1 tricks. It can be DM'd last I saw. Okay, well there you go. The sticky bomb might be the worst part of his kit. It feels really awkward to use. Maybe it's just me though. Cassidy, nothing really to say outside of his grenade instead of flashing is a sticky bomb. Watch carefully. AoE damage, right? Has a fall off center. Now this is where it gets interesting though. Watch if I aim just slightly closer to my target. Like let's just say just off the hitbox. So, right to them. And I think it does about 140 damage. I think it's 140 damage. So headshot plus sticky and they're dead. Or a body shot plus sticky and they're dead. It's interesting. It definitely makes him less frustrating to play against, but it's still quite potent against flankers. So is the hero strong? It's okay. He's pretty good. It's a decent rework. The only other change worth mentioning is that while he's high nooning, I believe he takes 30 or 40% less damage, so he's harder to kill while he's high nooning. He's not just a sitting duck. But it does take longer to charge, if I remember correctly. So, worth noting. Echo Copy, I'm not going to even show this. Echo Copy, you copy, I think at 300 HP, or half the HP of the target you're going for. So if you copy a tank, you get 300 HP tank with the armor. So the copy got nerfed hard. Genji's, nothing's changed. Hanzo, very little has changed. Again, I'm going to go over major stuff. Mei, you can no longer freeze with primary fire, but you do slow them down, and it does a lot of damage, like a Zarya beam. It's like 100 damage per second. Sojourn we've done. Soldier, nothing. Sombra, okay, Sombra's the one that deserves looking at. Nothing's changed here. Nothing's changed here. What has changed is this. The hack takes a little while to go off. It used to be a lot shorter on the early stage of alpha, and Sombra was unbelievably broken in early stages of alpha. One of the top, like, not as strong as Sojourn, but definitely up there. Hack, you stay in stealth. Your people, your teammates can see them through walls, not just you, as long as there's hacked. I think it's like 10 seconds, something like that. And they take 30% or 40% more damage. I don't know the exact number, but for example, watch this. Right? As opposed to slightly slower. So it makes that target more vulnerable to your damage. As well as it only, okay, listen, really important. Hacking only removes their abilities for 1 second. 1 second. Okay? So it only removes their ability. So when you're hacked, you're only hacked for 1 second. EMP doesn't matter. 1 second. Really nice quality of life change for people that are annoyed at playing against Sombra. There's other things about her that are a little bit frustrating, but I think overall, Sombra is definitely a little less frustrating to play against. Even as a Zen player, you get hacked. You get, it's annoying, yes, but it's better than being, hacked permanently. The only other thing to say is that EMP is a flat damage on anybody that gets hit by the EMP. I believe it's 25 or 30% damage on anybody who gets EMP'd. So instead of them being just hacked, they get hacked for 1 second, and then they lose their HP. So watch this. HP full. There you go. About 30-40%. And that applies to, it doesn't have, I don't think it has any additional effect on the shield, Zen shields, nothing like that, or canceling shields. It just removes HP. She might get out of stealth faster as well. Yeah, I think you're actually correct with that. So there's going to be a lot of little micro details with Sombra that I missed, but you're going to get the overall picture. Nothing's changed with Symmetra. Torbjorn doesn't get armor. He gets temporary HP, which I think is a pretty big nerf. Tracer Falloff was nerfed, so you might not notice this much, but this is a really big deal for Tracer damage. So watch Tracer damage at this range. About 10 meters here. Okay, barely got it with a kill. So they just basically nerfed how much damage that she does at range and mid ranges. So overall, Tracer nerf for sure. No, it wasn't even fall off. I think it was just damage per pistol was nerfed. So a lot harder. Widow is 200 HP. Ana, I think there were some cooldown adjustments. Bap Shift does a little bit more healing. Brig Bash no longer stuns, but does now go back to 50 damage. So watch this. This doesn't stun, but 50 damage. Which is definitely a nerf, but she is still playable in some circumstances, in some comps. A lot of people are putting her in F tier. That's just a cap. She's not F tier. She's just a little bit different. She functions still exactly the same though. Lucio gets ult a little faster, if I remember correctly. And then that's basically it, guys. There's not a whole lot left. There's some Zen UI changes you can check out. Like, for example, there's Harmony in the bottom left. There's Discord in the bottom right. There were some bugs with Discord working through walls, like this wall hacks, but hopefully that's been fixed. I think there's been some Mercy UI changes as well. I pray that they actually rework Moira, because Moira has also not been touched. So obviously a hero, I think, along with Roadhog, that needs some love, needs some checking out, some adjustments. But yeah, we will see. Okay, let's actually take a look at the patch notes, and let me talk about what I have not gone over. And if you guys have any questions, this is good. Can I ask questions that are pertinent to what we're going over? Hopefully stream has not been too laggy. I'm going to shut down Overwatch just so I can have one fewer internet window open. Okay. What happens if Brig bashes a swinging ball? I'm pretty sure it like stops it, but it doesn't stun it. I'm not sure. We haven't seen a lot of ball played as much. How much input do pros have on the balance? I think pros have had a relatively, probably more input on the recent balance than ever before. There's been a lot of open communication with the pros the last month and a half, which has been really, really nice. Now, I will say this, to give credit to Blizzard devs, there are a lot of whiny pros. There are a lot of pros who give terrible advice, but in general, most of the pros, I think feedback was relatively accurate, and I think Blizzard's smart enough to sort out most of the crap. And I think overall, the changes that they made during the course of the alpha were a positive. Does Lucio not need to worry about EMP when beating now? I think it's still reasonable because EMP is a pretty strong DPS ultimate. It's not very strong, but it does damage, right? The 1 second hack, everybody can see them behind walls. Summer does more damage to everybody, but it's not guaranteed. You must trance this. You must beat this. Yeah. Okay. What scrim comp is scarce? I can't talk all about scrim comp. We'll talk about macro in a second. Push is just basically, push is really, really simple, okay? I'm going to draw push out in case you guys haven't been able to get to beta yet. Push is quite simple, all right? All push is you have a robot right here. You have a spawn over here, and you have a spawn over here. What we're trying to do as Team Yellow is push the robot all the way to the enemy team's spawn. And what they're trying to do as Team Black is they're trying to push the robot all the way to our spawn. To push the payload, to push the robot, so one person has to be standing next to it. It doesn't heal you. It doesn't go faster if 3 or 4 or 2 people on it. Just one is enough. And as it pushes the payload, it goes very, very slowly. Oh, it's struggling, right? Struggling. And then let's say you lose the fight. Oh no! Enemy team starts to push it back. Well, the robot, when he's not pushing, he's running to the enemy's pusher thing, because what each team has is a thing that he has to push. He has our thing that he's pushing, and he has their thing he's pushing. So then the robot goes really, really fast back. He goes zoom right back to his little pusher thing, and then he starts to push the enemy thing, and he's going very slowly. And then we win the fight, and we stop them. And then now he's going to run all the way back. Poor robot. Zoom right back to where we last pushed our thing, and then he starts to push very slowly again. So you're basically just walking the robot back and forth, trying to win fights. If the robot gets all the way to the end, you win. If you get it to like here, it's a checkpoint, and you get, instead of spawning over here, you spawn right here. If it gets pushed all the way to, like, let's say here, then instead of spawning here, you spawn here. So you get closer spawns. You get rewarded with closer spawns. Usually most push maps devolve to whoever can push it the farthest, and then when the time runs out, if you're in the lead and the enemy team doesn't touch the robot, you win. It's a lot like payload in that aspect, kind of like a seesaw payload. The only thing I would say is different and interesting is the fact that when the robot's pushing, he goes very slow. When the robot is walking and pushing, like let's say walking back to where we naturally pushed it because we just turned the fight over, then he walks very fast. So interesting to know. And only needs one person, to stand next to him. There's no benefit to anybody more than one person doing it. Push games are very quick. They're only 8 minutes long, and they very rarely go longer than 8 minutes. You very rarely see long overtime fights. Much faster than Koth even, usually. Yeah, if I miss your question, please go on my ! Discord. Can a moderator check to make sure that the ! Discord link works? If it doesn't, I think the one on one of my recent YouTube videos should work. I apologize if it doesn't work. Let me know, chat, if it doesn't work, and I will update it. But put it in Ask Spilo. I will get to your questions if I missed it. I'm sorry, guys. Do you know if they added any movement acceleration? I'm not sure. Do I enjoy the push game mode? Yes, I enjoy the push game mode. It's very short, but it's relatively fun. I think the maps are pretty cool. I think New Queen Street and Colosseo both have different strengths and weaknesses. I don't think they're perfect maps by means, but it's relatively fun. Do later stages of push feel similar to second point 2 CP or is stall less of an issue? No. Stall is almost never an issue. Obviously later, if you push it to the very end of the enemy spawn, then yes, it gets very difficult to cap. But again, the mode's only 8 minutes. Okay, we failed to cap it. Wait 3 minutes, and if you have the further push, you're gonna win. The interesting thing with robot is it's very important. For example, like let's say we're talking about the robot pushes here, right? Blue versus pink. Let's say we push it to here, and that's it. If the enemy team pushes it to just here, like let's say that's like 1 millimeter further, then we lose. If we don't push our thing further and the time runs out, we lose. So it's actually unbelievably important that you do not let the enemy team push it past your record unless you're like, we have to let them because we have to regroup or we don't have enough ultimates or like it's actually really important that you make sure that you try and avoid letting them take the lead. Whatever team has the lead usually has a massive advantage because like, let's say we have the lead just by a little bit on team yellow, okay? And we're like, oh, we beat them. Nice job, guys. Well, now the robot has to walk all the way back. And a lot of times we'll take another fight here. Oh no, we lost. And guess what? All the way back. And then we might even be able to contest it before they beat our lead. So if you have a big lead, sometimes you can actually like lose 1 or 2 fights before the enemy team can really contest your lead. So I know that's a little hard to understand. You'll understand it more when you play. Okay. So assault maps being removed. I mean, there's nothing really to say here. No 2CP. That's nothing but a good thing. I personally enjoyed Volskaya. Sometimes I enjoyed parts of Anubis. But, you know, there's so many bad apples and everybody's disagrees and like everybody hated Hanamura or everybody hated Volskaya or everybody hated Temple of Anubis. And the vast majority of these maps are by far the most hated maps. And they're just bad balance. Anything that, and 2CP, the flaw with 2CP was the fact that you could lose 2 fights and lose the map. You could be on attack on 2CP and lose 7 or 8 fights and only win 2 and win the map. And like, that's just not fun. It's not just, it's frustrating to continually lose fights to be like, yeah, we won the map, but man, we won 1 Hanamura attack on first and we won 1 Hanamura attack on second. And then I just have to grind my face up against the second point over and over and over again until it worked. That's just not fun. Maps should try and aim to have as close to 50-50 as possible. Obviously, defender's advantage is the thing, and that's important. So maybe let's say 60-40 with defender's advantage, but it should never be like 80-20 for defenders versus attacker, or 70-30 even. That's just too frustrating. Nobody likes to only win or only lose in those situations. And then obviously respawn, stalling, like that kind of stuff is just awful. Okay, 5v5. Okay, so let's actually talk about this. So one thing about 5v5, so there's a couple of things that are changing with 5v5. If you haven't noticed already, the biggest change with 5v5, the 2 biggest changes with 5v5, and you guys are going to get like some secret big brain Overwatch League access here, kind of. The first one's obvious. All the tanks got buffed. So yes, there's only 1 tank, but every single tank has more HP. Every single tank has more flexibility. Almost all of them have more flexibility and more versatility. And they're a lot less reliant on being constantly pumped into healing. So not only do tanks take less damage, we'll get to the individual changes in a second, but they're more flexible. They're more independent. So you're less, I need pumping heals and this. You're a way. So it's like, yes, there's 1 fewer tank, but all the tanks are stronger. The other thing with the 5v5, and this is something that I think it's really important to discuss, is if you followed my macro strategy of Overwatch, okay? And if you followed the way I coach much at all, okay? We always talk about map control and angles, right? We talk about how tanks create space. So like, let's say this is the map, right? If I'm playing on this map, I want to try and control as much of the space as possible. Like, let's say this is a choke here, and then there's a high ground up here, and there's a flank over here, If I'm playing the game, I want to try and set my DPS to control flanks, right? To control angles on the enemy backline too. Okay, this high ground's really good. Well, I'm gonna clear this high ground often so that my Sojourn can take this angle and have the high ground because the high ground's really powerful, right? We're not gonna get into talking about why angles and map control are super strong. I have a lot of videos on that already. There's a lot of videos on YouTube and even just general, probably even like Valorant and heck, even Apex Legends and Fortnite videos that talk about angles and map control being important. But the interesting thing about Overwatch 1 is that it used tanks to create space. Tanks as in Winston dives in, clears this high ground, they have to back off. Now his DPS can take this high ground and the D.Va's helping him, right? And then maybe you take that high ground and then now the D.Va sits on the high ground and it's impossible to get rid of that high ground because there's just a fat old D.Va sitting on the high ground. Your Sigma clears an off angle or shields the off angle so that the enemy team can't abuse the off angle. You send the Hog on a flank. Now that flank is yours because nobody can 1v1 a Hog, so he's cleared out that angle. You have Reinhardt walking down a choke or Reinhardt clearing out the high ground with his shield. They have to back off because of his hammer and because of his shield. Like, there's a million examples of how tanks create space. The interesting thing, like even Wrecking Ball slams in backline. He baits all the attention on him so that now your team can take these angles, take these flanks, take the map, because nobody's looking at them anymore. They're all looking at the wrecking ball in the backline. So what's changed with Overwatch 2 is all the tanks have continually opportunities to create space. Orisa can shoot, walk forward without taking damage, the ball can slam, Doomfist can slam, bait attention, create space, contest high grounds. All the things can create space, right? Zarya can bubble a DPS and an angle. She can walk herself, beam people. But what has changed the most Overwatch 2 is the fact that now you're significantly more reliant on your DPS creating space themselves. They are actually the space creators in Overwatch 2, as important or almost as important as your solo tank, because there's one fewer tank. It is unbelievable important that your DPS understand the control of angles and flanks, because if they don't, they're going to die over and over and over again to the enemy DPS taking angles. And the fact that, as you might have heard, because there's one fewer tank, and supports are a little squishier. They're a little bit more fragile. So if you're not actively denying the enemy team the angles, the map control, your support's going to feel really squishy. The other thing that supports have to do now is it's even significantly worse to focus only on heal botting down mains. So we'll just go don't heal bot, right? So we talk about, remember everyone's talked about the plat on a playstyle, which is a little bit facetious, but it's, you just pump your heals up your Reinhardt's nano them off of cooldown. That absolutely will not work. It's significantly weaker in Overwatch 2, because remember, with the fewer tanks there are to swing on, Reinhardt has to create space in other ways. Reinhardt has to create space by controlling left and swinging right and fire striking this. And also because of the tank changes, the tanks need less healing as a whole. In fact, it's way more important for Ana what you're doing to heal your DPS. What shots are you landing on the enemy Tracer? What shots are you landing on the enemy Cassidy to control those off angles? Zenyatta, we talked about the Zen Brig comp and how it's really good at controlling off angles. Well, now every support has to be thinking about that. If I'm playing Lucio, I can't just sit on Heal Song or even Speed Song and sit inside my Reinhardt. I got to go deny the high ground. I got to go look to boop this off. I have to go peel my backline off. You have to be way more involved as a DPS and a support in controlling the map, because there's fewer tanks to control it for you. And so you can't indirectly help. You have to directly help and control space. So it's significantly more important for you to be able to control space. The other thing in Overwatch 2 is that, especially in like higher ranks and really 100% in the pro level, bunker, and by bunker I don't mean Orisa, Sigma, Bastion, I just mean any composition that's immobile, just trying to turtle on point, right? Like think like Symmetra Mei, Ryan D.Va. Let's say Moira Lucio, Winston D.Va, the 5-man dive, they just go to point and sit, and build Cole. Bunker is dead. Bunker is dead. One tank is not enough. It is not enough. If you go to point, you want a Winston Bubble and D.Va Matrix. If you go to point, you want a Ryan Shield and D.Va Matrix. If you go to point, you want a Sig Shield and Orisa Shield. You cannot bunker in Overwatch 2 anymore, almost at all. You absolutely have to split off, control angles, control space, look for aggression here, look for aggression there. It's dead. You cannot simply go to point and sustain. Sustained comps as a whole are dead. You will see sustained comps in terms of the same heroes being played occasionally. I won't spoil meta things, but they do not play to simply rotate to point and survive until we cap point. For example, Goats back in the day, when it was playing up against something like triple DPS or even standard dive, didn't give a flying fart about controlling off angles. You had 3 tanks, you had 3 supports, they'd rotate to point on King's Row, and they'd sit there with shield, Zarya Bubbles Matrix, all the heals in the world, and all the DPS angles in the world could not outpoke their heals. And they just didn't care. They just put cart and turtle, push cart and turtle, sit in a room, turtle. You can't do that anymore. Things went to 2-2-2. People still found a way. Ryan D.Va Mei, Lucio Bap, massive heals, massive Matrix. That is dead. That is dead. You cannot simply just go to point as 5 and expect to live anymore. It will not work against any team. Now, am I being facetious for lower ranks, mid ranks, the average rank experience? Maybe, yes. But at any higher rank, and even in lower ranks, it's going to be weaker. You might not understand why it's weaker, but it's going to feel worse just standing behind Ryan Shield and trying to survive against a pharmacy. Not gonna work. Not gonna work. So you have to be way more proactive as a DPS and support in controlling flanks and angles. And obviously things like timing, we talked about this, planning, all this stuff. I told you guys this stuff is important. I told you that nothing would change. I told you this is not the fundamentals of Overwatch. These are the fundamentals of shooters and combat in general. And I was absolutely right. In fact, I was more right than I thought I would be, because bunkering, which was the ignorance and ignoring of map control, is significantly weaker than it was before. Tanks doing if they don't create space that much. Tanks do create space that much, but they can't sit AFK without actively looking to contest angles. When you're talking about creating space, we're talking about Doomfist diving a backline, Doomfist diving an angle. We're talking about D.Va contesting a high ground. We're talking about Zarya bubbling her DPS so that they can take angles, that they can take duels and win. We're talking about Reinhardt running at people and running at backline because he's impossible to kill now, and creating space and creating attention, baiting attention. We're talking about Sigma doing the same old crap he was before, shielding off angles, taking those duels. Same thing with Roadhog. There's actually not a lot changed with how tanks work. You just can't rely only on bunkering and turtling and not looking to proactively take space. Tanks absolutely have to take space. Tanks actually have to hold space. There's nothing changed with the fundamentals of tank. It's just more important that your DPS and supports know what they're doing as well. Okay, does that make sense? I know this is like complicated stuff, especially for some of you guys who might be newer to stream, but this is really important that you guys understand. This is a huge change in Overwatch 2. Tab scoreboard, I'll let you guys there's a lot of these details that I'm not as interested in. These are absolutely important for tracking enemy DPS. You can actually ult track a little bit easier with this, which is kind of a cool change. To me, this is a flawed implementation. It's a good idea. It's something that Overwatches need, but it's definitely not in its current implementation. It needs a lot of work. Let's just put it that way. A lot of the sound redesigns are amazing. I don't know if you guys have played Widow. Widow sounds absolutely phenomenal. A lot of the heroes sound great. Genji, there's a couple of heroes that don't sound so good. I think Genji's sure can sound a little weird. But overall, I think overall largely positive changes in the sound design. One thing that is being complained about and is hopefully going to be fixed is there are still a lot of visual clutter and audio explosive, especially early in alpha. If you got hit by a fire rocket, it felt like the house was burning down. It felt like it was like post-traumatic stress disorder trigger. Your screen would shake. It was like, and it was a mess. But hopefully, I think over the course of the last several weeks, that has changed and improved, and hopefully they continue to improve it to make it to where it's visceral and exciting, but not overwhelming to the senses, because that was a very find a new insult. Give me a category. We'll think of something. How do you feel about main and flex support? Nothing's really changed. It's the same thing. Flex support, supports are a little bit squishier, I think, just due to the fact that tanks are have a harder time protecting them and holding space for them. But it's not like revolutionary. I mean, I don't know. I think you're just gonna have to play it see for yourself. Okay. Is Briggs in good? It's not great, but it's still playable, yes. Very map specific though. Actually, no, Mekle, they don't. They feel okay. I think as a whole, everything feels a little bit more open, but that's just the nature of the situation. Is Lucio considered flex support now? No. Ping system, I mean, you guys can look up a video on this that will explain it better than I will, but basically it just it's like location target calls. It's going to be huge. It's a very, 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 very big quality of life thing. It's not going to make your game, it's not going to make you stay playing Overwatch if you hate it, but if you are playing Overwatch, you're going to enjoy it more because the ping system is like a really, really nice communicational system. Imagine all the new voice signs they added, like yes, no, 3, 2, 1, but something that's arguably even better than that in terms of like actual impact. The HUD display and the UI still need work in my opinion. For example, headshot indicators are like white with a red outline instead of just red, so it doesn't look very good and it's actually kind of hard to tell. There's a couple of things with the HUD and the UI I think that need changing, but overall it's interesting. Okay. Maps, Circuit Royale. Okay, so let's go over these maps really fast here. So we're just gonna go down the list here, and then I'm gonna look back at Anima's list, and if I forget anything, his list will remind me. What's this about people not being able to tell if they're low or not? Is that still a thing? Okay, so there was a period of time early on in the alpha, and that might still be a thing, where the blood effects on your screen and like the the deep breath stuff when you're like low was really, really inconsistent. So people were having a lot of hard time telling how low they were just from they don't always want to be looking at their health bar. So There was a lot of complaints about that, and that might still be an issue. Let's turn off. Let's just check out Circuit Royale. Let's get Okay. Excuse me. So this should kind of give us some good mobility options, so we can move around the map quickly.
Welcome to Circuit Royale.
Can we get used to looking beefy today? Yeah, I'm a big boy.
Humanity is
Probably should have picked a different hero, but I can't be bothered to pick like Tracer because my thumb hurts, so I'm just gonna go like easy mobility hero. Okay, so this is defense. Circuit Royale is just a payload map. This is the spawn. You're gonna walk out here. You're gonna push the payload. There's high grounds here. And you're gonna push the payload all the way to here. You're gonna walk it on here. Now, this is the thing about Circuit Royale. It's actually... I'm not a huge fan of this map, to be honest, in terms of design. What makes it oppressive is probably pretty obvious to you guys. There's like no flanks. There's like no angles. It's very linear, straightforward, one direction, which means a lot of things like BAP Zen feel really tough here. Like snipers feel absolutely oppressive here. It's very hard to rotate and move. And then when you thought this was bad, it gets even worse, because if you're gonna have to cap, you have to push the payload all the way to here. Well, guess what you have to look at while you're capping? You gotta look at this, and you gotta look at this, and you gotta look at this way back here. It's actually really miserable to push this all the way to this point. And then it doesn't even necessarily get a lot easier because, again, very linear, not a lot of flanks. There's some flanks underneath, but very linear, very long range. You push the payload all the way to here. And then third is a little bit more options, but then there's a lot of isolation on third. So for example, if you go co-side here, whoops, co-side here, I'm a noob. I've not played this map enough. Then there's like this here, right, which is really, really cool, but then obviously there's a lot of isolation from there and where you need to push cart, which is all the way to here. This high ground is really, really impressive. It's a beautiful map, but first point is very, very problematic in terms of design. I think it needs more cover. It feels too much like a Paris kind of a situation. Okay, what are the next maps here? I can involve Midtown. We'll check out Midtown.
now enter.
Memorizing this is going to be tough. You'll get used to it. Yeah, you'll get used to it. Trust. I don't want to play
It takes a team to tango.
There's more voice lines as well. Some of them are pretty cool. Woo.
I will find the key.
So I'm on defense again. Defense. Attack. This is their spawn. Walk out to here. This is actually a pretty hard point to attack for a lot of teams because this high ground is quite oppressive. Now, what teams can do is they can force point. So what ends up happening is most defenders usually end up playing around this section of the map. Some people play here. Some people will play back here. Some people will even utilize this room here or utilize this room here. But this is pretty good in terms of comes to high ground control. A lot of high ground control. The point is very, very naked, which is kind of unusual for a hybrid map in terms of how vulnerable point is here. There's not a lot of cover on point. So high ground control, things like that is very important. Trying to do this quickly. I want you guys to be able to kind of figure these maps out yourself tomorrow and have a good time with it. Push payload. High ground control up here is really strong. Push the payload underneath makes it a little awkward, actually. There's this little rooms, these little rooms, this little flank in here. Capping second is a little tricky because this is pretty open for pushing. Third is freaking weird because then the payload goes through like up here and then it goes through like here. And then these high grounds are really weird to deal with. And then again, it goes all the way to here. Really, really open space to finish with. There's a lot of really awkward fights that happen around this area here because this high ground is good. Oh, by the way, check this out. Elevator. Sorry, I'm having trouble turning with my thumb here. So yeah, interesting. Interesting map. Very wide open. And then the push maps we'll talk about briefly. I'll go through these really fast because again, I think I don't want to spoil things for you guys. You guys need to kind of go out and give it a shot yourself.
Arriving at Coliseo.
Scoreboard and ranked. Yeah, I mean, I could show you, I think. You see this?
Humanity is
Eliminations, assist, damage taken, or damage healing, all that kind of stuff, or deaths. And you can see your enemy counterpart. Kind of weird, to be honest. So push. The points unlocking. 3, 2, 1. There's the robot. Everybody races the robot. The robot unlocks, and if you win the fight, you can push the robot. He pushes mine further, or he pushes the enemy further, then, you know, we win or lose off that. What makes this map really interesting is the fact that this area is pretty neutral. But what gets really interesting is actually pushing the robot up to here is actually really scary because there's a really, really oppressive defender's advantage on this high ground up here. So if they're pushing robot, this gets to be really, 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 really ugly. This in high ground in general is pretty much meta-defining. Not meta-defining, but like macro-defining in terms of like what teams are going to do to try and win. That's going to be basing off of like who can control that high ground, who can maybe avoid that high ground, things like that. Capping is pretty hard in this map, like it is in most push maps, just based off the fact that like how close the spawn is. I'm going to let you guys figure out all the details yourself in terms of the other stuff. New Queen Street. A little bit more open.
Traveling to New Queen Street.
Okay, so. I do not want to play this. Lazy mobility hero. Okay, so push. Robot is on the right side from my perspective right now. Robot's right there. A lot of teams will fight for this high ground in this tunnel up here because it's pretty important space. And then the robot starts to push. You have a lot of little goofy flank rooms that are really, really scary to deal with. So you got to be aware of that. There's this little flank in here, which has a mega. You're going to keep pushing around here. This becomes a really difficult spot for attackers because there are flanks here that defenders can take, right? But then there's also this here. This flank is really rough for attackers to deal with because if you have like a sniper or soldier or something like this, this is a pretty scary sightline to deal with, as well as it gets even harder because as the robot pushes up, you have an inaccessible high ground here from attackers that defenders can just walk onto. So interesting map, a little bit more open sightlines, lots of relevant flanks. Okay, I think that was it for maps. Yes, I will leave Overwatch open, but I do want to return to our thing and kind of stay on target with what we want to looking at. So, heroes roll passives. We talked about this. 30% knockback resistance. All the tanks take less damage in terms of like not less damage, less booping, less displacement. Lower ultimate generation for damage. In other words, when you heal a tank, you get less ultimate. When you damage a tank, you get less ultimate. I want you guys to think about this in terms of how we explain the macro, in terms of how important those DPS duels on the flanks and angles are. Hard pocketing a tank, is it going to even reward you with a very fast ultimate? In fact, it's discouraging just shooting enemy tank, healing my tank, herder. You're rewarded a little bit more for controlling and enabling and pressuring DPS in your own tank line. Damage, I'll move 10% faster. This is actually a change that you don't notice a lot. It definitely has a small impact across the board, but it's not like meta defining really. Nano farming comps are dead. No, this used to be 50% actually instead of 30%. So it's not dead, no, but it's obviously a little weaker. Regenerate 15 health per second after 1 second without being damaged. So does the support even have self-damage? Okay, so let me just give you everybody knows Mercy's passive, right? Imagine Mercy's passive, but a little bit stronger. That's essentially what you've got with all the supports. So if you're an Ana, you take damage, don't panic. If you've got cover, then you don't need to nade yourself. You can just wait, you'll heal right back up again, and you'll be able to use your cooldowns later. Same thing with Lucio. Lucio is actually pretty tough, because if Lucio is like wall riding and dodging your shots, he doesn't even need to be on heal song. He can be on speed song and still be healing himself. So that's pretty interesting. Same thing with Zen. Obviously, like he regenerates from his shields automatically, but that happens a little bit faster. Brig doesn't have to worry about getting a health back. She can just heal herself, so that's a huge quality of life thing. Moira doesn't have to heal or to heal herself if she takes damage. There's a lot of little things that this is a really, really big quality of life change. Temporary shield and armor pulse have been combined to overhealth with no special attributes. So in other words, if you I can show you here. Let me actually change the scene and make sure I'm in the right scene here. Yeah. So check this out. That is not armor. That is shields. And if I'm Brig here, you get the same thing during rally. You do not get armor. Listen, guys, you do not get armor during rally. You get overhealth, like Tord, or like Ball Slam, essentially. Oh, that's the other change with Brig. Don't let me forget, guys. Your bash range, it's further. Old bash, you get like from here to here, right? Maybe with a little jump. Here, significantly further. So that is one Brig buff. Very, very nice. Yeah. So the temporary HP, let me go back and check here. Oh, armor reduces all damage by 30% now. So you guys remember armor, how it'd be like, If it's a bullet, it reduces each instance of damage by 5, which means that it's more effective against tracer and beam armor, and the first splash damage is 120 per rocket, which means like all that crappy calculation stuff, nothing. It's flat 30%. If you got armor, it's 30% reduction. Now let's like say I've got like, I mean, how much HP does Reinhardt have? Let's say Reinhardt has like 365 damage, so he's only got 15 armor. It's still gonna flat reduce 30 damage in any instance of damage, but it does mean it is a nerf. Listen guys, it's a nerf to burst damage in terms of like projectiles, far off shots, Hanzo shots. If you have armor, it's a flat 30%. In other words, I believe if Brig takes a headshot, I don't think from Hanzo, I don't think it one-shots her. It will not one-shot her anymore. The overall reduction, like she can take 2 far rockets now, which before I'm not certain that she could. Does Bash get Inspire now? I mean, everything is Inspire. It's the same thing as usual. Oh, you can't Wraith out of Graviton Surge or Graviton Flux. You cannot fade, Moira Fade out of Graviton Surge or Flux. You can no longer May Shift out of Graviton or Sigma Flux. Yeah, that's mostly it. Let me actually look through the changes here and see if I forgot anything. This is so annoying, guys. So annoying. Seismic Slam doesn't pull in enemies anymore, which is nice. But the Meteor Strike slows you down. It's actually really, really annoying. If you get hit by Meteor Strike, it actually slows you down for a period of time. Really, really annoying. Nothing crazy here. Oh, the rock does more damage. That's worth knowing. Radius for the adaptive shields increase, so you get more shielding for targets that are a little bit outside your range. I think that's probably to compensate for the 5-man change, which makes it harder to get big fat shields. Faster decay. Bob's health has been reduced. Again, people's damage are going to be lower, so it's harder to kill a 1200 HP target. We've talked about all of these. Beam's a little weaker. Stormbow's a little weaker. Trap does not freeze you, it slows you a lot. But it does more damage now. We talked about all of this stuff already. Wall's a little weaker. We've talked about all this. This is a big one. Really, really, really big change. Fortify out of Grav? Good question. I'm not sure. Feels like you shouldn't be able to, but I feel like you might be able to. Longer sleep cooldown. Stronger self-regenerative burst. That's actually pretty big there. Not self, excuse me, group. Instead of doing 75, it does 100. It still does 150 for yourself, I believe. This is pretty big here. Lucio's Sound Barrier doesn't take an eternity to build. Yeah. So yeah. Let me go through Anima's list here to see if there's anything else, and then we'll do Ask Spilo. Map overview, ping system, scoreboard interface, hero changes. Does it feel easier to coordinate with teammates with less players? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, if you're going to have uncooperative folks, then it's going to feel the exact same. But what is going to feel better is the fact that there's a lot less visual clutter. It's often a lot easier to see things. Obviously, we talked about like the audio mixing can be a little bit intense, but it is easier to track what's going on. It's a little bit less confusing. How has the meta evolved? I can't go into details, but there's obviously been a lot of shifting and changing in the meta. There have been a few heroes that we don't see at all, and a few heroes that we've seen a couple of times. Maybe I'll do a hero tier list to give you my general take on things. Does anyone have a link to a tier list that I can make? Maybe that's something I can do next. Old economy is interesting. Obviously, like, tanks are a little bit harder to farm ults off of, whether you're damaging them or healing them. So ults I do feel like charge a little slower. It will definitely charge a little slower as a whole. Tier list would be great. Somebody find me a tier list if you don't mind. Is there any point for pinging? Yes, scouting, information sharing. It's actually really, really helpful. Even in like lower mid-rank games, there might not be a lot of communication. There might not be a lot of like awareness. It's still pretty helpful. Once I tone down the reverb, the audio quality will improve. Hope you're right. You're right. Okay, so let's shut down Overwatch for a second. Along with this wonderful... I don't know if they have it yet, but I highly recommend you check out the Overwatch 2 menu music. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the menu music. So I don't know if they're gonna have it, but at least it was an alpha. It was so relaxing. It sounded like something like you're in a Disney World queue line for some like futuristic kind of crap or something like that. I loved it. I thought it was a really nice little tune. Okay, no Sojourn. Okay, so that's fine. We can just check Sojourn in there later, or just pretend. Okay, so you guys tell me. Would you guys like this for high ranked play or low ranked play? Let's do that. What do you guys think? High ranked play or low ranked play? Because I could do both, but which one would you guys like first? Because I think the answers in them are going to be a little bit different. Oh, sick. We found another one. And it has Sojourn in it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. High rank? Okay, we'll start with high rank. Okay, so let me put this as a caveat, because I think ironically, even though it's more pros, this one is unquestionably more situation's not the right word. Up in the air. Subject to change at any point in time. Because balance changes might change things. And the other thing you guys have to understand, and I'll say it till I die, that pro meta is not dictated by 5 or 6 heroes that are strong. It is dictated by 1 or 2 heroes that are strong, and then heroes that synergize with those heroes as well. In other words, if you think about GOATs, you're not thinking about like, man, Lucio, oh my gosh, that hero is so strong. No, you're thinking that Lucio is just a hero that fit really well with D.Va and Brig, right? That fit well with Ryan, who fit well with D.Va, right? Again, Ryan wasn't especially oppressive in that situation, but if you're going to play a brawl comp, you want to Ryan. That's just kind of how it is. So with this in mind, I might rank heroes lower or higher than what you see in Overwatch League meta. But it's just because my initial impression is long-term, over the course of a year and a half, these heroes I think will relatively be decent, given the situations. And I'll try and give my arguments in this. And also keep in mind that I'm not perfect either. Obviously, I haven't seen every single team's scrim. I'm not a big brain. I don't have the combined brain of every Korean and Western coach in the history of the world. So this is just my opinion from what little I've seen. Okay. Ana right now I think is probably pretty good. I think I was a little bit surprised at how strong she was. I think Nade is definitely a little bit of a weaker thing for her. I'm trying to think of like what in Overwatch 2 has made her stronger. I don't know what in Overwatch 2 has made her stronger. She just feels less squishy. Not having to nade yourself is great. Nano is still really strong. Having a gun to shoot people on the off angles is really strong. Having a sleep dart to defend against angles. Like, I feel like she's... I don't know. I might put her in all right. I'm going to put her in all right. I might adjust these things as I go. She's a fine hero. She's a fine hero. Ashe is probably all right as well. There's nothing particularly wrong with Ashe. BAP is probably all right as well. This is going to be, by the way, this is very tentative. I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about this. I'm just going to quickly zoom through it. Bastion is probably bad, at least in pro, like higher level play, just based off the fact that CC still toasts him. Any sort of like, but really a lot of cooldowns toast him, and range toasts him. I think Brig is probably nice. I don't think Brig is particularly strong, but she's not trash. She still functions in her niche okay. Cass is probably nice. I think the flashbang change, I think was probably a little bit of a nerf, but he's fine. He's not terrible. I think Doom is all right. I think Doom got a little overrated, a little underrated, and then a little overrated in the pro meta that was happening behind the scenes in alpha. D.Va has to be amazing. There's just so much flexibility with the hero. I think Echo is probably... I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Echo right now. I think the copy nerf is a big deal because you're copying tanks most of the time, unless you're copying Tracer, but Tracer is also nerfed. So it's not great. I think Genji's actually pretty strong. Lack of CC helps. The Tracer nerf also helps because now you're talking about the best flanker in the game, hands down, got a significant nerf, and that opens up other flankers to be good. I think Ball is okay. Not particularly strong, but he's not weak. He's just not as strong as other tanks. I think Hanzo's fine. Junkrat is I mean, I just think Junkrat's bad, but honestly, a lot of this has more to do with the fact that it's just he's a very map-specific pick. He will always be a map-specific pick until they rework him a little bit. You will definitely see him in a couple of maps, I think, but outside of that, no. Whereas I think these heroes have options. Maybe they're not exactly in the meta, but they have more options to be seen in more maps. I think Lucio is good. Hero's really, really, really good at peeling, especially since the Brig nerf. Lucio as a peeler is probably the best peeler in the game now with the shield bash nerf. And the ultimate costing has also helped him a great deal as well. Obviously, the one weird thing about Lucio is on paper, you're like, how does he help off angles? How does he control space? Well, we need to understand that Lucio is quite good at controlling off angles and quite good at controlling space at the higher level, because you have Lucios who are way better at wall riding. They're way better at moving around the map. They're way better at taking duels. They're not the platinum Lucio bot sitting on cart. If you're the platinum Lucio bot sitting on cart, you are a terrible support to play in Overwatch 2. But if you're not, the hero is actually pretty good. He's also relatively decent in a lot of the metas that we've seen over time. I think Mei is actually pretty good. The mouse one change, the freeze change, is actually a net positive in a lot of ways, because it actually helps her flexibility against non-Rein. In other words, a Mei sitting in front of Reinhardt was obnoxious, but she's a lot better against Genjis. She's a lot better against other DPS that she can reach, because 100 DPS is a lot. That's a lot of damage, and it's actually not that hard to land either. Mercy's okay. Not particularly popular right now. She's a little squishy, but she's not trash tier. There's definitely situations where she's usable. I think the same thing goes for Moira. Again, her survivability alone makes her popular in some situations. I'm going to put Orisa here as well. I think Orisa's probably bad. Let me put this with a caveat. Orisa is bad the way she's currently being played, but I think if you had a main tank player or a tank player, and I guess now, OTP Orisa for a month and a half, and threw him into an Overwatch League scrim, knowing exactly what he was doing, you could probably see an Orisa comp work. It's very difficult for Overwatch League players to justify putting a lot of time into a hero that's not immediately obvious is really good, because it has to be a huge time investment, right? What if the hero is just trash? Then it's a huge gamble, and you could have been training other things. So what you'll probably see is Orisa becomes more relevant in the future as contenders teams, maybe even tier 3 teams. Maybe somebody crazy 15-year-old kid gets out there and becomes cracked at the hero and solves the hero for us. That's likely to happen with Orisa. I think Orisa has way more options than either of these two other heroes, and maybe even more options than some of these heroes. I think also if she receives a few buffs, she might jump all the way to like all right or even good. Pharah, she's okay. She's quite good on some maps. The fact that you can't turtle against Pharah anymore is a big deal, but also she's still like, she's not going to be farming up a barrage and bullying tanks and smashing you out. She really does have to kind of play like the Yas and taking duels approach. I think Reaper is all right. He's a lot worse against tanks, but he's still pretty good against like assassinating people. His value as a flanker is okay. I actually think I might put him in nice, just because I don't think he's actually that particularly strong of a hero. He just meshed relatively well with an early on meta that was popular in the Overwatch League. I mean, I talked about why the Orisa spot is here. I actually think Orisa has a good argument for being nice, but nobody's going to be able to put the time into her to put her in nice yet. Maybe we put her in nice as just a potential, but not yet. I actually think Rein is all right. Not particularly meta, but has a lot of opportunities to get stuff done. His flexibility buffs were huge. Gives him a lot more options. Hog isn't terrible. There's no real tank that's absolutely trash. I mean, the fact that he can still one-shot. I think Sigma is fine. I think Sigma actually benefited a lot from the survivability nerfs, because against Sigma versus Dive, the problem wasn't the fact that his cooldowns were useless, Rock is useless, Shift is useless, Shield is useless, his damage is useless. The problem with Sigma versus a lot of Dive comps is he just died instantly. He just got hacked or dashed, or like if your shift didn't matter, you just died instantly. But the survivability buffs, there's like the return on investment for some of these survivability buffs affected more tanks more than others, I think. I think you see tanks like Sigma and Zarya doing way better in dive than they did before, because they're actually a lot harder to just dive and kill. You can't just dive and kill and one-shot a Sigma anymore. So he can actually have time to actually get value out of his damage, to get value out of his rock. So Sojourn, I think, is actually bad-ish nice right now. I might have to shift some of these around. I think she probably is nice, but you're not going to see her played probably much at all. I think Soldier's good. Soldier's good. Soldier benefits a lot from Tracer being nerfed. Soldier benefits a lot from one fewer tank, so he can take those angles without being contested. Remember, he's a very, very good dual DPS. So if there's no tanks clearing out the space, then he's not worried about how much damage he does to a D.Va or how much damage he does to a Winston. He's worried about the fact that he can win a 1v1, and he doesn't have to worry about a 6 damage Tracer. He only has to worry about a 5 damage Tracer. That Tracer nerf is a big deal. Sombra is... I don't know. Sombra is all right. There are niches where she's good. She was probably good or even amazing earlier, but she's definitely not anymore. You could even make an argument for her being niche and nice, but I'm not so sure. Symmetra's bad. Very, very, very niche pick, but nothing has changed about her, and she really, really struggles with the fact that there's no Matrix, or there's one fewer shield. I think Torb is bad as well. You know, again, like, the turret is not a good matchup against DPS. DPS break it too fast. It's better against, like, heroes without as much range. But the big deal with Torb is the fact that he was already a niche pick, but then he got nerfed further by the fact that his E no longer gives armor. That's a big, big deal. Temporary health is not as good as armor. This is really, really big deal. Tracer is all right. I might put her in good or all right. I'm going to say all right, just given the situation. The damage nerf really hurt her. Before the damage nerf, she was amazing / really, really good, which was surprising to nobody. But the damage nerf was a big deal. It was a really, really big deal. Widowmaker is all right or good. I think Widow actually has an argument for probably being good. She's played on a lot of maps. She's played in a lot of situations. The HP buff was a big deal. The Sombra nerf, to where she wasn't just instantly one-shotting Widows because it takes forever to hack people now, was a big deal. The Tracer nerf was also a big deal. One fewer tank, also a big deal. Widow is definitely stronger. D.Va gets 3-second Matrix. And you're talking about a hero that can help anybody, anywhere, at any time. She's not necessarily somebody you're going to see in every single meta, but she's always on the tip of the tongue, if that makes any sense. She could always be, oh, well, maybe D.Va would be better here. That's kind of the way I look at it. Winston's all right. He benefits from having things like Ana and Lucio in meta, and things like Genji being decent. Like, he's going to benefit from that as well. But yeah, we'll see. I think Winston has a good argument to be better than Doom in a lot of circumstances. Zarya, I think, is quite good. I think Zarya is a hero that's, again, going to be a little bit situational, but what she does now is good. And I think Zen is... I'm going to say all right. I might put him in nice, but I think like there's a good argument for thinking that Zen is definitely still a staple in a couple of compositions. And if you're really good with controlling the map, he isn't as squishy as people are making him out to be. You just have to be way more proactive with how you're doing. If you get dove, you're going to die. I mean, that's always been the case, and that's definitely the case, more the case now than ever, but... there's no way Orisa's A+. There's no way. What might be easier for me is for me to react to other people's tier lists. I want to, if you guys could do me a favor, link me some tier lists in chat. Preferably more recent tier lists, or from tier lists that aren't like, you know, random YouTube content creators. Because that, I can critique the tier list a little better than I can create my own, if that makes any sense. It's easier to criticize than it is to, because there's so much like context that's lost. Yeah, Riss is amazing. Really, really fun, but she's not super strong. Yeah, find me a couple tier lists. Give me a couple tier lists, and I will go through them. Alright, what YouTube video is this? Overwatch 2, CarQ. Is this for average? Alright, let's give this a check.
Impressions hero tier list based on my experience in the Overwatch alpha playtest to help you prepare for the beta. No sponsor today, just make sure to come over to my streams at twitch.tv/CarQ during Overwatch 2 and my other channel, the Carchives, where I do more tier lists and gameplay, Car Clips, Spanish, Portuguese channels, Twitter, Insta, TikTok, yada yada yada. There's gonna be a significant balance patch before you get your hands on the game on April 26th, so this list is gonna be pointless in a few days, but speculation is fun, and looking back at what changed from patch to patch can really contextualize why certain heroes are good or bad. And everybody has different opinions, and establishing the context of each tier list is important, so listen up. This tier list is for the average competitive ranked player, solo queue. This is not the tier list for the pro. Okay,
good to know. Great context given in there. So like, let's just say gold through diamond, silver through diamond. That's what we're going for. And this is, I'm gonna try and remember the stuff that was from alpha. Okay, so from alpha, where do we put D.Va? let's actually just skip to the end. This will be really easy. Okay. S, 100% agreed. Orisa and Strong, no. No, 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 no. You can make an argument that her weaknesses are less likely to be exploited in lower ranks, but you can also make a very good argument, which I'm going to, that her strengths are also going to be a lot harder to exploit in lower ranks as well. Things like Javelin, things like her spinning E, her ultimate, all of those things are going to be a lot harder to execute in lower ranks, like disproportionately. She's actually a relatively skillful hero in terms of execution, as well as her gun's a little bit tricky to handle as well. I think you can make an argument for niche, but there's no way she's an A. Sojourn in A, for the average player, I might even put her in S and Alpha tier. I know she's an aim-dependent hero, so maybe that's why she's an A. Soldier in A is perfectly reasonable. I think, especially like Soldier's gonna be quite strong. I think in lower ranks. Sombra, no way that she's A and mid tiers. I think B playable. I think she definitely bumped up a tier. Again, this is from Alpha. This Sombra now is probably C and maybe even lower in lower ranks. But in Alpha, Sombra was pretty strong. Tracer, no, I don't think. Frankly, Tracer. I mean. Yeah, actually, yes. Tracer belongs in A. Ana, no. Ana, I don't. I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't think so. I think it's a lot harder to get value out of nades and sleeps with one fewer tank than it used to be. Because it used to be you could just nade enemy tank line, you could sleep the enemy tank. There's just low hanging fruit value there. There's one fewer tank now. Moira, I can see is reasonable at being strong in low, mid ranks because she just doesn't die to DPS very often, so that's value in of itself. And it's definitely is going to be more of a struggle for a lot of average players. Doomfist being playable, I don't know, to be honest. I might consider putting him a little bit lower, but yeah. Roadhog, I think you could even bump him up a tier in lower ranks because like if you land your hook, like it's just dead, and nobody's going to contest you anymore. You're impossible to kill. Like you're even harder to kill than you were in live, and like that just, to me, that just makes Roadhog significantly stronger. And if you compare someone like a Roadhog to Orisa, I think a Roadhog is just going to be like more easy to get stuff done, more easy to do what you're supposed to be doing. Sigma, that seems fair. I mean, he's going to be harder to kill. I mean, the ultimate's a little bit stronger. The rock does a little bit more damage. I mean, yeah, I think maybe you could even, yeah, I think it's fine. Ball, I don't see in any world in which Ball is super easy, but I feel a lot less comfortable commenting on Ball though. Zarya, yeah, I think Zarya is probably playable. Let me do this. Let me look for the low hanging fruit here, because a lot of these are just like super. I'm just not sure. I don't know. Can't be sure 100%. So I'm not gonna really split hairs over some of these. I think Lucio here is reasonable. You could put him lower maybe depending on the rank, but like assuming it's like a platinum diamond, it's probably reasonable to put him here. Okay, so this is where I disagree. I think Ryan being niche is no. Ryan demands so much less healing now and has so much more flexibility. I think he must be bumped up to playable, if certainly strong. I would probably swap places with Orisa and Reinhardt here. I think this is really not good. I think Winston also can go to playable because again, the weaknesses of Winston is in the mid-lower ranks. People were really struggling to get value out of the hero, but now it's a lot easier to just get space. Obviously you need to min-max the amount of space that you get, but I think it's not too hard to get value out of Winston because you just don't immediately blow up. So like a lot of these tanks where it was like struggling to get stuff done before you instantly died, they got a disproportionate, I think, buff from some of these HP and incoming damage things. No way Bastion's in C tier. No way. You could very arguably put Bastion in B tier. In low ranks, silver, gold, Bastion should probably go to A tier because his ultimate's almost guaranteed at least one kill every single time it's used. And his shift as well, the movement is a big deal. Junk probably needs to be bumped up as well because Riptide is just unstoppable in lower ranks. I mean, I think that's just a general rule for Junk. I mean, he's still a niche pick. May is fine, Sim's fine. I think Torb probably could be bumped up to playable just because Torb is always more OP in lower ranks. And I don't think Mercy deserves being this low either, because I think the low-hanging fruit of her shift makes her a lot harder to punish in lower ranks. For example, you can play Mercy against Dive in lower ranks, but you can't play Mercy against Dive in higher ranks. So I think Mercy's weaknesses are less exploitable in lower ranks. Genji in D tier is terrible. Genji should be playable. There's nothing about Genji that's necessarily weaker. Even if we consider the alpha, there's no way that like Genji's in D tier. Like he's weak, yes, weaker. He's still like a weaker DPS, but the Tracer nerfs, the reduction of CC have been nothing but buffs to him, really. So he must move to at least C tier, if not B tier, in terms of strength, even in like middling ranks. Okay, so like let's just focus on like on the low hanging fruit here. Let's see. Somebody else posted another one. I'm gonna check that out really fast. Yeah, Lethal's everything is D tier. Let's click a couple of these. Crimzo, Stylosa. Lethal's existence is D tier. Okay, let's go. What's up here? Based on tier list from aggregate. Best heroes, Lucio? Maybe. Doom is way too high. Genji's too high. Tracer's too high. Diva's too low. Reaper's too high. Ryan's fine. Sojourn's too high. Zarya's too low. Sigma's probably too low. Bap is probably too low. They need to be good. Winston might be too low. Wait, what is this aggregate? Oh, okay. Widow's probably too low. I think Zen, Mercy maybe are probably fine. Maybe Zen needs to be above and Mercy stays. Bastion needs to be lower. Again, if we're talking like high level play here, Brig needs to be slightly higher. Orisa maybe even a little bit lower. Torb probably should be lower. Symmetra probably lower. No way Hog is the worst hero when you compare Hog to like Symmetra, Hog to Torb, Hog to Orisa, Hog to Bastion. Hog is not that bad. Hog is not that bad. Having a hero that could just win flank wars is like quite good. Dodging responsibility. Why am I not in Team House? I'm married, dude. I got a family. I'm not going off to war. The other assistant coach, Commander X, is also like, I think he might be coming off and on, but like, he's got a family too. It's tough. It's tough. I'm planning on visiting. I will be visiting the Team House, but I'm bummed about it for sure. But like, I mean, I think it's for the best. I mean, Bastion's niche for sure. He's definitely stronger than he used to be, but I think like until you have the hero have like some sort of way of like his hitbox is just so fat. Crimzo. Again, low hanging fruit here. Like I can't really argue with this. I think I could argue with like maybe Soldier could be like A tier, but like this seems reasonable. Doom I think is too high. I think Doom is like solidly B tier. I think like people are overreacting with Doom. This is relatively reasonable. I think maybe you could bump Widow up depending on the situation. I think Sombra's a little too high. I think Sombra's actually more like C tier now, more of a niche pick. Yeah, I mean this is I agree. I think Crimzo is like by far the most accurate to me, which I mean to me makes sense. Like pro player, I think this is like a very reasonable tier list in my opinion. Why Doom should be lower? Because he's still like he struggles to get kills. If you shoot Doom on off angles, he struggles with staging. He can still be CC'd and like dislodged in his, and he's not bad. He's just, I don't think he's better than Winston in all aspects. Like putting A and A, like if you put Doomfist and Winston both at A or Doomfist and Winston both in B, I would have fewer problems. But I think he's still hard to. He's hard. He's flipping hard. This hero in general might deserve A as teams get better and better at Doom, but I don't think that's the case. I don't even think. Yeah, I'm not going to comment anymore, but you'll have to wait and see. Commander X is 40. Commander X is ageless. He was 50 when he was born, and he's never going to age. He actually ages in reverse. Doomfist isn't the Winston killer everybody's hyping. That's my opinion as well. I think Doomfist is not a bad hero, and you will almost certainly see him in Overwatch 3, but I don't think you're going to see him as much as people are saying. Silos' Overwatch 2 hero list. Okay, I'm going to say this is from Alpha to cut Silos some credit, okay? So from Alpha, this is a hard cap. 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 No. That's fine. This needs to be an S tier for sure. A plus, no. That should go to okay. Doomfist, A plus, no. Echo, A plus, no. Junkrat, okay, no. Down further. Symmetra, okay, no. Down further. Torb, down further. Widow could be a little higher, but probably fine. Pharah is fine. Reinhardt, Winston, no. These heroes do not need help. They need to be bumped up. These are like okay or A plus heroes, depending on the situation. Zenyatta as well is at worst an okay hero. So Silos' list is probably the worst one we've seen yet. Yeah, this is not a good tier list. Okay, from Overwatch 2 Alpha from Custa, reasonable. Doomfist maybe a little too high, D.Va maybe a little too low, but reasonable. Okay, Sojourn needs to drop. Well, Sojourn again. If we're talking about very late Alpha into Beta, Sojourn is definitely lower. If we're talking early Alpha, Sojourn needs to be S tier. So it's impossible for me really to say. This is reasonable. I think Widow can move up a tier. But Custis is also reasonable. I mean, you could just see the people that have been like actually paying a little bit more attention, like more recently, maybe through scrims or whatever, have probably slightly better takes on that. Yeah. But interesting. Shoot, chat. Okay, all right, we'll finish up with some Ask Spylo. D.Va's really strong, but I'm telling you, every tank is going to be pretty strong. Every tank is going to feel strong. It's going to come down to like which individual, like which hero could you get the most value out of it. And I love how many of the tanks now just have so much more flexibility with what they can do. So I don't think D.Va's a must pick, certainly by any means. And it's also, again, like I said, it's very meta dependent as well. So if you're playing a rush comp, a lot of times Zarya, Rein are just going to feel better. If you're playing a dive comp, a lot of times Winston comp, maybe a Winston is going to feel better. If you're playing a spam comp, a lot of times Sigma is just going to feel better. But it just depends, right? So I am going to do this. I hate to do this, but I'm going to skip some of these questions and go to Overwatch 2 questions because that's technically what we're focusing on for today. How will supports be different in Overwatch 2? We talked about this a little bit already, but supports have to absolutely focus on controlling angles and controlling the map and not just hard healing your tank. Your tank needs less healing, you get less ultimate charge for healing your tank, and it's way more important that you defend yourself by attacking and defending the enemy angles, the enemy DPS. If you are an Ana and you run away from tracers and hide in your Reinhardt's butt cheeks, you are going to struggle. You must be able to understand the map in terms of controlling angles, controlling flanks, helping your DPS, that kind of things. Okay, let's give this one the old handy dandy check mark. Okay, will all the heroes be work enabled for the beta or with some work in progress? To my knowledge, I think there is still some work in progress, but I actually don't know much about this. Doomfist or is a Summer Bastion guide? Screw you, man. One at a time. Is Bastion still going to be a cheese throw pick? Yes. But significantly less so. He's definitely more flexible. I don't know exactly what niche Bastion fits into. Definitely not against ranged comps. He's terrible against ranged comps. Against dive, probably also pretty bad, but against like shorter, medium range comps, mid comps. I mean, not like you're going to go into a platinum ranked game and play against a hard spam comp usually. So, I think there's situations in which he's okay. How will Surgeon be hit scared and projectile oriented? We talked about that already. Just the damage from Tracer is nerfed, so that's the big thing. Any tips to ball one tricks for how to adapt to Overwatch 2? Not really. You just need to be good and quick with your rollouts and obviously good with your duels. With ball, you're not going to be getting these fat 6-man slams to create space. A lot of times you're going to be diving, backlining, and trying to kill backliners and trying to dive and kill DPS. So it's not just going to be fat slams, general chaos. It's going to be more about like you need to win duels. You need to be, or not necessarily win duels, but be scary enough in the duels that the enemy team's screaming for help, and then you create space that way. Let's share it. I've been covering the preferred metaphor in Overwatch 2. Experimentation, and as I already said, it really comes down to a hero is strong. People pick heroes that pick around the hero. I mean, I could probably leak without any ramification or like any repercussions, but obviously everyone talks about like the Zarya, Lucio, Sojourn comp that was very, very, very popular early in Overwatch 2. Well, that was because guess what? Sojourn's flipping busted. Guess what? Double bubble Zarya, being able to bubble somebody instantly back to back, is also flipping busted. So people pick comps around that. They picked a comp that we want to play Zarya, we want to play Sojourn. What can we play around that? Well, we've got, who benefits a lot from double bubble? Well, Reaper is flipping terrifying with bubble, more so than probably any other DPS. So now we're picking a Reaper comp. Well, what deep supports do you want to play with a Reaper comp or against a Reaper comp? Lucio, of course. What support do I want to play against a Bubble Reaper? Probably Moira, right? If I can get away, or an Ana, maybe if I can get away with it, because Nano Reaper is also terrifying with a bubble. So there's a lot of things that you kind of build a meta based off of that, and I think you'll continue to see that. Obviously, less so now because as of right now, there isn't any one hero that's unbelievably oppressive like there was with Sojourn and to an extent Zarya. But obviously D.Va is still a strong hero. She affects the meta. Zarya is still a strong hero. She affects the meta. The fact that Tracer has been nerfed is going to affect the meta as well. So I think you kind of keep an eye on those kind of things. A lot of it also has to do with people understanding how the map control works and thinking about like what DPS and what tanks benefit and are important at controlling the map. Like you're not going to see Symmetra because outside of TP she can't control the map. How does having all DPS carries faster affect the feel of the game? Actually, not a lot. Like this is the interesting thing. So no, I have not heard this discussed almost at all. It is almost a non-factor. It is something that is useful and interesting and has definitely some subtle changes, but it's not a big, like crazy change. As Master GM on a bat player, what are the key things I should know? Nothing. The heroes function almost exactly the same in terms of cooldowns and things like that. The only thing that I said over and over again is you must understand the importance it is to heal, support your DPS, your angles, and to damage and harass the enemy DPS and angles. This is a situation where sometimes as a BAP, it feels more important to put 50 healing into your soldier than 100 healing into your Reinhardt. There's just kind of the situation that we're at in a lot of these situations. Situation. I don't know why I keep saying that word. What is the tank's job for the team now? Just fat DPS? I mean, it's just space creation. You just space creation. If anybody, low-ranked player, mid-ranked player, had the wrong impression from Overwatch 1 that tanks were meant to protect your team, that is absolutely going to have to be gone now. Tanks were never meant to protect your team solely. In fact, that was their secondary job, if at all. That is absolutely more evident in Overwatch 2. It's almost impossible to protect your team as a tank. It's more your job to create attention, to threaten the enemy team, to clear space, to clear angles, to bait attention so that your team can win the fight. There are some DPS or some tanks that are good at helping their DPS. There are some tanks that are good at just being a DPS all on their own. But yeah. Do Tracer and Genji bonus speed? I believe so, yeah. Is my boy Genji still bad? No, Genji's a little bit better. The Tracer nerf helped him a lot, as did some of the CC help. I think you might even see some Genji in Overwatch League at some point. We'll see. With the DPS getting movement buffs, can Ryan still get value or can he just not reach anyone? So that's the interesting thing. You would think that Ryan cannot reach anybody, but with the charge change and the double fire strike and the extra HP, you actually see Ryan being a little bit more involved than you would think. So I think that's a really big thing. Because I was concerned about this as well. I was concerned about Ryan. I was concerned about Zarya not being able to help off angles, not being able to reach off angles, not being able to doing anything. But the reworks of those heroes have helped those problems immensely. So kudos to Blizzard for some quality balance work. How much more punishing is making a mistake as a tank now? Significantly less so. Significantly less so. You have so much more HP and survival. Remember, it's not just extra HP, guys. You take less damage. You take less damage. You take less damage. I actually don't know the hard percentage. Somebody will have to look it up for me, but you take less damage as a tank. 500 HP goes a longer way than 500 HP did before. Okay, how can you feed harder as a tank now there's less enemies punishing? Yes, you can. I mean, obviously the goal still needs to be to feed smart, to do... For example, if you're like, I'm doing so much as tank, but we're still dying. Well, it's probably because the enemy tank is doing more than you. So you still need to be better than the enemy tank in terms of feeding. But yeah. I've heard that supports are struggling in Overwatch 2. Yes, I actually absolutely agree with this. This is a really intelligent question, and I think we've already talked about this before. Absolutely, not controlling the map has definitely been a big problem with, I think, why some people are struggling on support. Does the ping system affect comms at a high level? Yes, very heavily. It's a huge scouting change. Being able to ping effectively significantly removes the need for callouts because you can actually physically light up on the map the person and the location of where they're at. It's a big deal. Your Winston can't just take the hook and you save him. You have to actually do things on your own. How can I deal with the fact that Locky will be a single tank in my games? Unfriend on Discord, Blizzard, and then ghost. Don't ever speak to him again. You'll make it, I promise. You mean armor absorbs more damage now? No, I don't think so. Chat, can somebody fact check me? I swear that tanks take less damage now. I'm pretty sure it's not just the HP buff. I'm pretty sure they just take less damage, period. Maybe that was a change. Maybe I could be just absolutely dead wrong. Less knockback. Yeah, it was not in the patch notes, you're right. I swear it was before, I must be wrong. But the extra HP matters a lot. Yeah, so it must be the armor change. Okay, that's my bad, chat. I swear that was a change before, but maybe it wasn't. Okay, so just more HP, more mobility, armor stronger. Yeah. Because I swear things like pulse bomb were a lot weaker against things, but maybe I'm just remembering. Yeah. How does the relationship between map control versus objective change with the loss of one tank? Map control becomes more important and objective becomes less important. It's hard to leverage objective. I mean, the change to 2-2-2 weakened objective, and then the change to 5-man Overwatch weakened objective even further. The best way I can think of it is I'm trying to think here. It's a good analogy here. I think of a good analogy. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If the cure got a lot weaker, then the prevention becomes a lot stronger. If the chemotherapy is ineffective, then you need to make sure that you don't get the cancer in the first place. And to me, that's the best way of describing it in this current situation right now. We're losing a fight by trying to avoid and hide from the enemy isn't good enough. It's not a strong enough solution anymore. You actually do need to be more proactive in controlling space to prevent you from getting from that position. Why is Gager a dwarf? 10 questions science can't answer, and all of them are just this one. Is Hitscan OP? No. It's arguably slightly stronger, for sure, because projectiles in general had higher damage instances. So in other words, you think projectile, you think Junkrat, you think Pharah, and those things benefit from big targets, big splash, slow-moving targets, so they're easier to hit with the projectiles. So hit scans are stronger, but that's not like you're never going to see any projectile heroes. Yes, it was an intelligent question, Dragonfly. Whether only being one tank will be easier to job to heal for the supports. Yes, it will be harder to survive. It will be harder to get value because you're going to be dueling other people, but it's easier to just not only have to focus on healing my Rhines permanently 1 HP. There'll be more things for you to do. So it's harder in some ways, but it's easier in other ways as well. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what you said. What I do with my team is staggering. My gameplay is my flaws. Try and take fights as 4. Like if we're talking about 5v5 Overwatch 2, I mean staggering is still going to be a thing. So try and take a fight as 4. Try and take a fight as 3. If you're never going to get an actual 5v5, then try and find the biggest portion of your team staggering and do something with them. I know that's not technically an Overwatch 2 question, but hey, it's on the list. Will Overwatch 2 be more variations of existing comps? Or more completely new? It's going to be a mixture of both. So you're going to definitely see compositions that look familiar. Like, yeah, this is a spam comp. Yeah, this is a dive comp. Yeah, but you might, especially with the tanks, you might start to see things like, why the fart is that being played with that? Like Doomfist dive or like, Zarya brawl, just based off of some of the hero changes. So the DPS and supports are largely going to be similar, though. Largely. Because they still are good at certain things and bad at certain things. Does Hitscan not help more in the 5v5 with map control and holding angles, though? Yes, it does. It does. In general, though. In general. Like, if you look at Hitscan in terms of, or projectile in terms of, hey, Junkrat spam, then yes, it's obviously, Junkrat wants to spam tanks and chokes, and obviously those chokes are less polluted and clogged with tanks now, so Junkrat's less strong. But there's still plenty of heroes like Hanzo that are decent, and Genji can control the map and control the angles because he's mobile, and obviously there's lots of other options there as well. So yeah, there's things. Doubt it. Do you think we'll see an SR reset in Overwatch 2? So actually, that is something that has been consistently called for. People have been calling out for that from the pros. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I can tell you that people have been crying about it. So maybe you see it. Maybe you see it. We will see. I'm not sure. Okay. Any last couple of questions here, because we've actually I hope that you guys have a better idea of what we've talked about here, because I think we've gone over a lot. We've gone over a lot, and I hope that you walk into the beta tomorrow with a good idea of I really need to be carrying angles, I need to be carrying DPS, things like that, all that kind of stuff. Because I think it's actually kind of cool, how the game has absolutely changed in some ways, and then absolutely just really not changed at all. And I think it's not changed so much as the priorities have become. There's certain things that were always important, but are now even more important than they were before. If that makes any sense. But it's fun, guys. It's fun. I enjoyed my time in Overwatch 2. I think you're going to enjoy it too. Are dumb flanks easier? Because yes, they are absolutely more important. The dumb card flank stuff is absolutely going to be way more wide open, but from the lack of a tank. There's fewer bodies. There's less of a chance that there's a shield or a matrix that's going to stop you. Will you care for your fingers better in the future? I'll try. I don't know if that's too deep, but how do you think London's odds are in this season? I think we have a good team. I think we have a good team. I think Chris has done a great job with the culture. I know everyone's putting us in last place. I'm not going to set expectations high, but I think we have a good team and we have good players, so we will have to wait and see. We don't have anything. We've got nothing to lose. We got nothing to lose and everything to gain, so you'll just have to wait and see. We've been working hard. And hybrid. I'm reading the thing wrong. Landon has done we really like Landon. Landon's a good guy. Is everyone hydrated enough? Mostly. Chris does a good job staying in their case about sleep and hydration and stuff like that. Okay, chat. I'm gonna roll. I don't know when we're going to stream again next, but I definitely want to get this out of the way so you guys can have your questions answered. If you have any further questions, you can throw them in Ask Spilo and I'll get to them when I can. I'm going to be hosting Maimon, who is, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He is an European Flex DPS warlord. He's a really, really great Flex DPS player in Contenders. Phenomenal player. It was his birthday yesterday, so please wish him happy birthday, happy belated birthday, please, when we toss him a host. So I will see you guys soon. Spilo out. I don't have anything else to say. What? It's just like me to mess up a host. How do you mess this up?